Richard III is one of Shakespeare's early plays. He'd had big hits with the three parts of Henry VI, and this is really the sequel to those, so it's kind of Henry VI Part 4 really. It's technically a history play, but actually the history is the least interesting part of this play, because the history is wildly inaccurate and people take great exception to Shakespeare's portrayal of Richard in this play, because historically he probably wasn't nearly as evil as Shakespeare portrays him. But we're here to put on the play, not the history.
Yes.
And what we've got in the play is one of the most interesting political thrillers that I think has ever been written. It also has a real vein of comedy running through it. And it has something of a tragedy buried in there, so there really is a bit of everything in this play, and I think that's what makes it interesting. And I think it's one of the first plays in which Shakespeare kind of mixed all those genres together. We made the decision to transpose it to a period in the middle of the 20th century, sort of just after the Second World War.
Okay.
For various reasons, really. It needs to be set in a period where a war has just finished.
Yep.
Historically, in Richard III, it was the War of the Roses.
Okay.
Because that creates a really interesting aura. It creates a really interesting sort of feel around in a community, because you've got a mixture of people in mourning because lots of their friends and family have been killed, but also celebration because a war's finished. And we wanted to move it to probably the most recent historical period where we could find that mixture. And it's a history that is more familiar to most of our audiences now than the 15th century would have been. It's a period where I think most of us had relations, grandparents who lived through the Second World War, and even if you didn't, then it's a period with which people are familiar because of the large number of movies and material from that period. So we've moved it to a historical period that's still history, but it's a history that we think people can connect with and relate to. And part of our point is that these situations recur in a cyclic way periodically through history. But I do hope that we'll come up with a production that has a certain visual impact. I think it's going to surprise people in terms of their expectations of what a Richard III is likely to be. And I hope it will challenge people, really. I hope it's a production where people don't just go and sit through it and then walk out of the theatre thinking, where are we going to have dinner? I want to send them out of the theatre thinking about the issues and things that have been raised in the play. I always think that the most damning thing that people can say about one of my productions is that it was nice. Not everyone.
Very inspiring word.
Well, not everyone will love it. I don't think you can create a production that everyone will like. It would be like aiming to do a kind of theatre McDonald's, if you like. What we have to do is find an interesting play, find an interesting version of that play with our very talented cast here, and create something that we like, that we think has impact, and that I'm hoping a lot of people will like. But I'm quite prepared to think that this might be a bit of a Marmite production. I think some people might not like it, but that's fine. That's better than everyone coming out saying it was nice.